I want to introduce the Budget Committee. I'm Sheila Noyce-Miller from Brimfield, the chair. Megan Cunningham from Brookfield. Candace Green from Holland. I don't believe she's here. Megan Panic from Sturbridge. And Michael Valenzola from Wales. Mrs. Boyd and Mrs. Leo are going to give a presentation, and we will hold questions to the end. And again, thank you for coming.
Thanks, Sheila.
Superintendent
Most of the
Boyd,
faces are very familiar, maybe one or two new ones, but we'll go through presentations very similar to what we've done in the past. High-level, quick summary. We initially started out with a budget for Tantasqua that was just over 5%. When we saw what the state funding was looking like, we knew that that was not something that we could get done. A couple of things we got lucky, because with that 5%, as we'll talk about in a little while, we're funding a couple of things with grants this year that we said we're going to have to continue to do that. And we did. We are in the very fortunate situation of having a better than expected health insurance rate that most municipalities around us and other regions did not get that lucky. So that helped, but we did need to do a number of other cuts to get down to the point of what we're going to show you is a 3.1% budget. Unfortunately, because of revenue issues and the state's shortage of revenues, those result in varying assessments that present different challenges for each town, and we're going to go through that too. So Kristen and I will tag team, go through the presentation, and then if there are any questions afterwards, we are happy to answer them.
So this is our total operating budget by series, which is the Department of Education's grouping for funding. That's how they group all of their reports at the state level. So the biggest thing that we like to pay attention to is the biggest piece of the pie, the 2000 series, which is all of your instruction funding, your teachers, textbooks, curriculum. And from last year, fiscal 25 to 26, a little bit more money is going towards the instruction. So that's kind of the big piece of the story. Insurances are down, so you can see a slight decrease there. And but overall, we're in a decent place. The majority of our money is being spent on instruction. Within instruction, we'd just like to break it down so you can see all of the varied pieces that we have. So that, especially across the street where we have academic and technical teaching. The academic, your core instruction, does support both sides of the high school and on the junior high side. So that's why it's a bigger representation of the pie. But within there, you've got your library media, guidance support, your Unit B building administrators are also in that instruction series. And
Looks the way it has for the most part the last few years, which is kind of, this is how we would like it to look. So this next slide is where's the money come from? So where are we right now? How are we hoping to fund this budget? The story here that's a little bit different, if you will look at, so the state share from 25 to 26, local assessments is up a little bit, which is what I referred to earlier. When we're short in other areas, we have no choice but to have the local assessment up. The state funding is pretty much flat, and that's true for dollar amount too. There's a 1% increase in Chapter 70, which is much lower than we've gotten in the past. The biggest story to tell, so to speak, is when you look at that little blue slice of the pie, which was out-of-district tuitions. That included out-of-district technical tuitions. So a story new for us, but you've probably seen across the state as well as the country, is the interest in Chapter 74 programs. So again, we have two schools in the one building across the street. Your academic, I say all students are academically being educated, and the technical school. That technical school, the percentage of students participating in a tech program has increased to the point it's over 45%. When I started here many years ago, we won't say how many, it was about 30 to 35% of that building that was technical. We've now gotten up to the point, this is the first year, we were close last year, but I believe this year, we will for the first time have a small, very small waiting list of our current 8th graders that want to participate in the tech school and take shops across the street. It's great that we have that in-house and the ability for them to participate. Again, the trades and the Chapter 74 programs across the state are definitely appealing. They're increasing. The fact that we'll only have a small waiting list is awesome. All of the sole tech schools in our area, I was speaking to Mr. Waddick earlier, the wait lists are enormous for their in-school residential. There's a lot of children out there that are not going to be able to participate in tech programs because there's just not space. The good news is we can serve our kids. The bad news is we will not have slots for out of district, and there is a couple of other towns that have been sending students here, should they choose and apply, because they're not aligned to a tech school such as Bay Path or Pathfinder. So we have reaped the revenue, it's a state set tuition, of a handful of students, 15 to 20 in some years, coming from other districts that we're not going to have the ability, we won't have the slots. We're certainly not going to take an out of residential area student if we haven't been able to serve all of our own students that want shops. That is the decrease, the $200,000 revenue decrease. The good news this year is we feel we can fill that shortage in 2 areas. We've got a little bit more where you see district revenues, our school choice funds and E&D, which is sort of the equivalent of a municipality's free cash, that we bumped that up $50,000 a piece. Isn't a lot, we're still in okay shape. We don't want to spend too much of our savings, but we can do that. The other great place that we've been, does it show? It shows, it does show, that it's 1% in both pieces of the pie, but the miscellaneous revenues is increased in investments. Our treasurer's been doing a great job. We do have a respectable emergency reserve, and he has been investing quite well so that for the last 2 years, when we look at what we've been earning in interest on investments, warranted us bumping up next year's projections. So that helps fill that void of the decreased out-of-district tuitions. Any questions on that? All righty.
The other piece that feeds into the local assessments for Tantasqua is the student enrollment. So, and we've noticed some trends over the last few years. Things change slightly from year to year. We have seen a larger shift up to the secondary schools, so more of our kids are at the secondary schools than at the elementary schools now. And we've got slight increases at Brookfield and Holland, as well as Sturbridge, while the other towns are going down. So that's kind of how we do the assessment. So our student enrollment this past October dictates what our Chapter 70 funding and what our assessments are, sort of how they're distributed across the towns. Any specific questions or comments?
This is exactly what it says, the 5-year average, again, of the budget, not the assessments. In some cases, those 4% years, we had a significant increase in state funding, so the assessments, if I recall, the 4.9% year, the total assessment was only 1.9. So we were able to do things, take care of our insurance issues, because the state gave us more funds, and the assessments to the towns was lower. This is not the case this year, where while we do believe that running a regional school district that includes all of the cost of liability insurance, health insurance, like a municipality, that a 3% overall is reasonable and respectable. The problem is when you get to the assessments because of revenues. That's where the challenges come.
As always, we like to share with you that our goal is to present a budget that we feel is affordable for all of our towns, so that while we only need 4 votes for a successful budget passing, we don't like to kind of stick it to anybody. We do our best to keep those costs down. We want to support our students as well. So what we've got here is we've got a $29,346,685 operating budget request, which is a 3.15% increase.
Bullets of notes in the budget. How did we get here? How are we here? Usually there's a lot more driving the increase. There's not a lot here. There's not new things or new people. We do have 2 teacher retirements. 2 is not a lot with a staff of 160 professional teachers and many other support. So, but we do make it a practice of when we have retiring staff to plan right off the bat to hire to replace at entry level. So that allows us to save some funds in the salary lines. With just 2, there's not a lot there. If you look at the total increase in the budget, it is, I believe it's $894,000. Salaries alone are up $899. So there's other areas that we've actually squeezed a little bit to get to where we are. But this is all about contractual salaries and existing staff. Our Worcester County retirement assessment is up 8.5%. I thought that was a pinch until I heard what Sturridge's was, so I am happy to have that. We got lucky with health insurance also, so that did help us come down from our initial projection of 5% when we actually got the health insurance. We were lucky. This might be repeated on the next page, but another way we got down. So for this year, we did add 2 positions, an assistant principal at the high school end and an adjustment counselor here. School committee approved funding them from rural aid, because rural aid has been coming now for 5 or 6 years. My biggest advocacy point with our legislators have been trying to get rural aid funds into either the Chapter 70 or committed as part of that January, February, March budget process. It never happens. We don't find out for sure that it even is going to live until June, and then we don't find out how much we're getting. This year it was December. It was November last year and October the year before. So we're very hesitant to build cliffs. We've not been using rural aid to fund positions when in theory it should be able to be used, but we don't want to take the chance. A lot of the things that we've done with rural aid when we found out is to be able to deal with our capital items and build our technology infrastructure, which is nice to do and not have to ask the communities for any capital funding in those areas. But that being said, we did for the first time say we really need these 2 positions to serve the overall populations the way they deserve to be served. So we added 2 positions this year that we're paying for from rural aid. We didn't want to do that next year. We wanted to get them back in the budget. So that first pass at 5% had those 2 positions in the budget. Then when we realized where we were at, we pulled them back out. So right now the plan is for the positions to continue, but be funded again from rural aid, assuming by June rural aid still exists. The governor's budget did propose including rural aid at the same level as it was this year. We've got to see what the House and the Senate do. I think that summarizes that one. And then, yeah, kind of continue. And again, I say reductions in quote because being right up front, some people call something a cut that isn't a cut. Those 2 positions we're not cutting, we're putting them back off to the side and funding them from rural aid. So at this point in time, those 2 positions that we added, we are hoping to continue with. We are reducing 2 instructional assistants, 1 per building. That will likely happen through attrition. We are not filling 1 high school custodian/maintenance person that is retiring. So we're going to work with the existing staff to keep that facility cared for the way it should be. We also, then you get to, I wouldn't call nickel and diming, but there's probably $50,000 worth of each miscellaneous supplies and materials that we went through every single department to squeeze as tight as we could in either supplies or textbooks. And the co-curricular, extracurricular activities, the 2 principals have been charged with a total dollar of approximately $50,000. All we know for sure right now is there's a couple of freshman sports teams that we won't run. The freshman basketball, girls and boys, and volleyball, that it's not that they're not usually filled teams, but they're lower. We've got to cut someplace. We've got to see where we're going to do the least amount of harm to the least number of students. So those are things definitely in there. What we left the principals is the ability to do between now and the end of the year is decide what other clubs and activities we won't run next year. So they're really looking right now and evaluating which ones have lighter enrollment that we might say, we're not going to do that next year. And we wanted to give them the time to really look at that, including the spring activity, to make those decisions.
I'd like to make sure we're as clear as possible. We've mentioned the Chapter 70 money is just not as, we're not getting as much of an increase. It's a 1.1% increase, $75 per student. So it's not a significant increase. As we also mentioned, those technical division tuitions are down, partly because our kids want to be there, and also Leicester is developing their own program, so not as many kids are interested as well. Our excess and deficiency in school choice funds, we've increased those to kind of offset those the tuition reduction, as well as increasing the miscellaneous revenues, specifically from the investment income. As has been in practice, technology and capital projects, we're doing our best to fund those through school choice so that we don't need to put those in the budget and ask our towns to put in money for those. There's more detail on those coming up.
We do still have a hardy applicant pool for school choice. School committee in their regular session will vote the number of slots next year. We look every year at each grade to see what we're comfortable looking at residents and how many more we're open to. 7th grade is usually how to get in. Once you don't make it in 7th grade, chances are we're not going to have slots in the other grades. But we will vote, and we certainly have right now an application waiting list that's pretty comparable to the last couple of years. They have until March 31st to apply, so it's in April that we start filling school choice slots. This is the table that you either love or hate. In many years I love it. This year I'm not loving it, but it is what it is. So because we have this split district that I love so much, 6 separate budgets, but in every town meeting we're looking at the elementary budget, district, and the Tantasqua assessments. So you can see, third from the end, everything we just talked about, that the proposed assessments that we're looking at and are going to need to vote have the total Tantasqua increase numbers quite high. And those are because of the lack of funds and minimum contribution shifts. Most of our towns have a higher share of students at the Tantasqua level this year than at the elementary, and part of that state calculation pushes them to fund more of the secondary for their minimum contribution. To the far right is where our elementary budgets are right now. So some of them are looking good because of what I just said. There's a few less kids down at the elementary, and some ways that we can squeeze some out-of-district tuitions. We're in a pretty good place. So what I always do is say, let me pretend I work for those wonderful regional K through 12 school districts and put it all together and say, if I'm going in and saying, in order to take care of all students in your town, grades pre-K to 22, which we legally have to support special needs to 22, what do we need to take care of all of your students? And that's where you see the second one there. So overall, what we're looking at right now is asking Brimfield for a total increase of 3.1%, Brookfield 2.9%, Holland, therein lies the problem, at 4.5%, which I think is a hardier number than I would like. When we're in the 2 to 3%, I feel comfortable continuing and going and talk to the towns. Sturbridge is at 2.9 and Wales is at a net of 1.3. So you can see where the challenges are, but you can also see why we're moving forward with the budget that we put out, even though the Tantasqua assessments look very high. Questions?
Are the elementary students going elsewhere, or is the population?
No, it's a census. It's the census, it's the population. Yeah.
Do you think that would be a trend?
Because the out-of-district, because we also look at numbers of attending out-of-district schools, That's not going up. In fact, for one of our towns, for the first time ever, there's not a single child going out of district, not going out for school choice, and not going out to the OSA charter, which is awesome. I take that as means we're doing a good job, but in general, the census is decreasing. The population coming up, the current 6th grade class for our residents is about 30 or 40 students, I believe, lower than our current 7th grade. So that's going down. Then there's going to be one jump. When I see the 5th grade class, unless something changes significantly in the next 2 years, the 5th grade goes back up to about where we are right now at 7th, and then everything down, 4, 3, 2, 1 goes down. So it's definitely an overall enrollment census.
Yeah, Deb, is this slide in the package here someplace?
On the, one of the.
I will get you a copy. I think what is in the package is actually just the actual Tantasqua numbers, not this. But historically, Andy, I'll email you this whole presentation. Yeah.
Yep. For the elementary school for Sturbridge, that increase excludes the school bus that was taken out of the operating budget.
Correct. Correct. That's how Sturbridge got down to a 1.2.
Is Sturbridge the only town where you're doing that, or are you doing that in other communities as well?
No, it's just a Sturbridge. Sturbridge is the only town that has its own in-house transportation. The other 4 contract out.
So the other towns are not having operating expenses funded through some other mechanism?
For transportation, correct. They just contract out.
Is the number of students attending Old Sturbridge Academy, is that a significant number from our district population?
It depends on what you call significant. For Sturbridge, there's a total grades K through 6 of 23, which I mentioned at the Burgess. So the numbers are onesie, twosie, threesies for the other 4 towns. I did mention that does cause a challenge, especially for Sturbridge, because those 23 students, K through 6, are costing Sturbridge money. In fact, they're costing at the same rate as we get to take care of, because we do all the work, and then Old Sturbridge Academy gets whatever the per pupil expenditure is that you spend on Burgess. That's how it works.
But for grade 7, they may end up here.
Correct. Well, what's happened is many of them come back. Many of them across the district have come back. But yes, if they want to continue for 7 and 8, that becomes an out-of-district cost for Tantasqua until 8th grade, when they're done. They tried to expand to high school, that was denied, so then they need to find. If they live in district, they come to here, or sometimes that we get a lot of applications at grade 9 because that option isn't there anymore. But when you have 23 across 7 grades, we've not found a way to realize savings in Burgess because there are 23 students that aren't there because it's over 7 grades. So if it was all in 1 grade, I'd say, yep, 1 class less and on we go. But that is part of the challenge. I forget. This is me? Okay. So this is, the top end is really Larry's favorite. The total budget is $29,346 that we're asking for. If you take out other local receipts that we just talked about, some school choice of E&D, our interest, investment on earnings, et cetera, if we pull out the local receipts that we have to put towards it, what we're asking the towns for is $27,606. The net school spending requirement by the towns is $25,198. So that's only up 9.5% over the net school required spending for the towns. The state average is about 27 or 28% over net school spending requirement. There's some out there that write at minimum, but there's some that are a lot higher. Then we just mentioned down the bottom, just kind of FYI, this has always been here, regardless of what's happening outside of the news. These are grants, they're all federal grants that are embedded in our budget, and our budget ask is net this. And we continue to use our summer camps to help fund some of our athletic program, and in this case, funding a new unified sports track Right.
Infield,
Indoor track, unified sports. And Kristen will go through school choice. We'll continue to use school choice to fund our capital plans, which I don't see changing, but I like to remind folks, these capital items for any other school district would have to be in the budget. We've got school choice funds to do those things. We're going to continue to do them.
The heavy detail is on the project. You have your capital planning document in the information we've shared tonight, but at a high level, these are the items that the $646,000 will be covering. One of the largest projects is across the street at the senior high, the curb cuts and the paving repairs. That'll take care of some of the parking lots and resealing and lining those. We're also going to be maintaining the softball field out in the front, so we're going to rotate that. Computers, technology, sort of the new paper and pencils for all of our schools will be upgraded, as well as building card access points so that we get more of our schools onto the same platform, so that a card for Deb and I can be used at any of the schools. That's what we're moving towards. In addition, we talk about the expense of transportation. Since we run our own collaborative transportation program for our special ed students, we plan to purchase another van to support the rotation of vehicles for there. Kind of a daily rate for us in-house, runs about $200. If we have to outsource one of those transportation, it can be upwards to $600 a day. So it is a significant savings for the district and all of our towns. And then at the junior high, we're going to continue sort of cycling through the flooring and replacing floors, as well as getting a new machine for our custodian and maintenance staff. And we're going to be repairing the recoating the tennis courts out here at the junior high. So that's where this choice funds come from.
Questions? Then we're down to my new favorite, the old one you send with some little character. We kind of just push this up and kind of Tantasqua who we are, what we do, and what stories do we want to tell. So if you will bear with me, I do want to tell a couple of stories. You know, we know we want our kids to be college ready, career ready, and good community members. And just a couple of awesome stories. From a college ready point of view, our advanced placement, our AP test scores. This is just calculus and A push. We do a number of others, but calculus average was 4.5 out of 5. Most colleges will give credit and let them move on or get credit for the course at a 3.0. So our average calculus scores are 4.5. AP US History, the teacher could not wait to email us over the summer to talk about 45 students that took AP US History, 35 of them got 4s or 5s. So those are incredible numbers that we really are preparing our kids, and we regularly have students that come back and let us know we were able to AP out of a whole first semester and we came in as a second semester student, which is awesome. College acceptances, just little teeny brags. By December 1st this year, we had a Harvard, an MIT, and a Notre Dame. It is not uncommon for us to get Ivy Leagues or high ends and tons of others. It is uncommon, however, to get them by December under early action and early decisions. So we were pretty excited with that. Career Ready, last year was our first year of a fire science class, which I'm not sure if folks knows, partners with the Sturbridge Fire Department and all the other fire departments. We love this class. These are kids who take a full semester worth working with our staff member in the classroom, but also they alternate through fire and EMT staff throughout our community. Last year, we had 14 seniors graduate that had taken this class. 12 of them are either working as a volunteer fireman or went on to college in a fire science major or went into the armed forces with a fire concentration. So it's a great class, it's community connected, and we're really excited about that. If any of you don't know how much our student shop work is out in the communities, All you gotta do is just walk out and open your eyes. There's not a single one of our 5 towns that has not had our electrical or carpentry working in their town halls or their schools or their police departments, DPWs even. Carpentry, this year, the project was a Brookfield resident to build a garage project, that's part of their curriculum. Our CAD program helped design and work with the Sturbridge Library to design mini cart project, a mini golf. And if you haven't gone to the Cornerstone Cafe, it is the best meal in town, best deal in town anyway. They're open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, yes?
Yes.
Wednesday, Thursday,
No,
Friday
sorry.
for lunch.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, that's what I thought. They really are the best deal in town. And we've got lots of co-ops, not just the tech program. The non-tech students have internships that they're working within some of our other schools. Lots of high school kids that go to an elementary school to work with students or music teacher, whatever their interests are, as well as our co-ops with our technical students. Student leadership, peer leaders is one of my favorites. So peer leaders is a club started in the high school of students wanting to be, it's actually sponsored by the ADL, and it started 2-3 years ago at the high school. Lovely group of kids who get together, learn how to have uncomfortable conversations sometimes with each other as well as adults. That group came down into the junior high this year, and on our last professional development day, which is an early release, half a day, all the students get to go home. The staff stays for professional development in the afternoon. We had 100 students between high school and junior high who were part of this group that gave up their afternoon off and actually facilitated sessions with teachers across the district. So every teacher, we had groups of 8 or 10 teachers and 3 students facilitating exercises and sharing their experiences. It was the best professional development we've had. Hearing it from kids just doesn't get any better. So that's an awesome group. I did refer to Unified Sports for track and field. Junior high here last year had it for bocce and basketball, and I think, did one happen recently or it's happening soon?
Basketball's happening right now.
Right now. I knew that the signs are all over the building. Student council I call award-winning. In fact, so award-winning that just within the last 3 days, our student council member is actually the vice president of entire Massachusetts Student Council. So we are, I think when Tantasqua Student Council walks in to the conference each year, they know Tantasqua's in the house. We have won many awards and are represented. They're a very active student council we're really proud of. National Honor Society continues to be really all about volunteerism and trying to find community projects to be part of, and you probably trip on them regularly and don't even know. So that's my few minutes of this is who we are, what we do, or at least what we're the proudest of. Yes?
Carpentry students. In Sturbridge, we have the Community Food Collaborative, the garden behind the town hall, and the kids from Tantasqua built all the raised beds. They supplied the material, they built those, and they built a big storage shed with all the tools that kept it.
Awesome.
And we get volunteers every year from the girls' lacrosse team, and they show up and they
Yeah.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
All that food goes to the 2 food pantries.
Yeah.
Every-
It's a pretty standard practice. Most of our sports teams require those kids to pick a community service project, and they're out there doing things. Our performing arts do the same thing. If they're not out in the community, they're fundraising for a whatever charity they've chosen each year to support. Any other questions? Okay.
No other questions of the budget? We will be, yes, Kevin.
I just would like to say that each of you, and Sheila, and Mike, and Bill, and full school committee, the principals, the directors, and everyone up and down the line are clearly controlling costs and protecting quality. And at times, you're actually having to reconcile working against yourself. It can't be easy. But as they say down under, good on you.
Thank you very much, Larry. We'll close the public hearing.
Yes, close the public hearing. We will be going across the hall for our school committee meeting and voting the official number for the budget and the assessments and capital plan and transportation.
Finance committee folks, if you want to join, we'll take it out of order and make that vote early on. Anyone who doesn't make it, I'm happy to email you.
Quorum being present, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:45. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes for January 21st, 2025 regular session. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion's been made by Mr. Haggerty. I have a second by Mrs. Noyes Miller. Are there any edits? Discussion. Seeing none, the chair will call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Any abstentions for the record? With 2 abstentions, motion carries. We'll now move to financial matters. First items we will take up are the budget votes for fiscal year 26. This time the chair will recognize the budget chair, Mrs. Noyes Miller.
Okay, I would like to make a motion for the total fiscal year 2026 budget of $29,346,685.
That is a recommendation of the budget subcommittee. It moves to the floor and does not require a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection? Seeing no objections, the chair declares by unanimous consent the motion carries unanimously.
I would like to make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 assessments as presented.
That's a motion brought forward by the budget subcommittee. It does not require a second. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Seeing none, then by unanimous consent, the chair declares the motion carries.
I would like to make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2026 transportation assessments as presented.
Bring that motion to the floor. Discussion. Any objections? Seeing none, by unanimous consent, the chair declares the motion carries.
And my last motion is I would like to make the motion to fund the capital plan as presented from school choice.
Bring that motion to the floor. Discussion. Any objections? Seeing none, then by unanimous consent, the chair declares the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Noyes Miller. We'll now move to our financial report. Mrs. Leo.
In your packet is also this year's to date through March 4th of our expenditures and revenues. Our revenues are tracking more like fiscal 24 as opposed to 23, as some of them have been coming in a little bit later. Some of that is due to just balancing checking accounts and making sure everything is posted in our systems as well. I don't believe we've got anything that is outstanding at the moment, but if you have any questions, I will certainly be happy to answer.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Leo on the financial report? Thank you, Mrs. Leo. Brings us to our student reports. Instead of by his first name, I'll just say Mr. Vice President.
So the student body just has a couple of more minor things to touch upon for the month of March. So last week, Wednesday, March 5th, Student Council sent 19 delegates to our annual 3-day-long state conference at Hyannis. So it was there where we just participated in the annual polar plunge on the beach this time. We learned different leadership skills, brought back new ideas, and elected our MASC's state executive board for the 2025 to 2026 school year. And from what I saw, our delegation seemed to have a lot of fun bonding with each other and making friends from other schools. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we put forth, what we learned at the conference. This week, Student Council has been running their annual Do Be Nice Week, a spirit week dedicated to making our school a more accepting and kind place. So we have a lineup of spirit days, lunch activities, and handouts to help foster these feelings of acceptance. tomorrow, NHS is planning on running their first pickleball tournament in the gym. There's been a big buzz regarding the tournament lately. We've had a lot of students and teachers that seem to be really excited to play, so I'm looking forward to see how that plays out. This Friday, we have our Emerald City themed spring fling. After homecoming, we took a lot of feedback regarding the dance and how we can make it better. So for this dance, we will be shortening it by an hour. So it will be from 7 to 9 rather than 7 to 10. And we will also be playing a student-submitted playlist by popular request. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those play out as well. And then we just have a couple things planned for the distant future as well. So Wednesday, April 16th, Student Council has yet another leadership conference. This time it is our regional CD-MASC Spring Conference, which will be held at Oakmont High School. There we will be attending workshops to improve our leadership skills, as well as elect our regional student council board. Permission slips were just passed out last night, and we seem to have a lot of interest, so that's exciting. The senior class has been working diligently to plan our prom, which will be held on May 9th at the DCU Center. I haven't received a whole lot of specific information regarding like pricing and stuff like that, but I've heard that our theme is a night at Gatsby's, so that seems to be exciting. And then lastly, Student Council has begun planning our annual senior send-off week. So as of now, we've just been brainstorming spirit days and different activities to bid our beloved seniors farewell. That's all I have.
Any questions for Ben?
What was the most requested song?
Oh, that's tough. I don't really even know.
You'll tell us next time.
What would you have requested, Andy?
Oh, geez, I don't know.
Yeah, not so easy.
Free bird, free bird.
Yeah,
Free bird.
All right, thank you, Ben.
Congratulations.
That brings us to our staff reports. Mr. Sturgis, good evening.
Good evening. This is a kind of a short turnaround since the last meeting. On the junior high side, I just said to Pete, we don't have the machine that they have across the street to have activities. But as I put in my report, our debut show choir, since I wrote this report, I have to turn in another weekend with a lot of awards. And so it should read actually back-to-back to now back gold medals on different performances. And the three girls' names mentioned in this one won the same award again in the next competition. So our current show choir is on a tear right now. So
They were grand champions on Saturday.
yeah, and the kids like to get their names announced on Monday morning when they do that too. So they're off to a strong start. Transitioning to the sports side, we did kick off spring sports this week. We had softball tryouts yesterday and today. Baseball tryouts are today and tomorrow. We have 20 or more kids, I think 28 girls for softball and about 25 boys for baseball. And we almost, if it wasn't for the swamp of mud, we're almost able to get out on the actual field for tryouts. But the good news is, at least for high school next week, we might have a good shot at it. We did get out in the turf on the backside of the high school for the softball crowd. So it's nice to see the kids outside. Makes you feel like the summer's coming. But not to jump ahead. But we did last month have a presentation for our students, our 7th grade students, called Earth View. There's a giant globe in the gym that the kids actually sit in while there's a presentation for them in world geography. It was pretty cool. Then they had a map that was about the size of half of a basketball court that they had like little contests and games to find locations. So it was academic in nature while they were waiting to get into the globe. So and kids seemed to really enjoy that. We had an old retired teacher who was here for a long time who used to do that. Mrs. Sokol, she came to introduce herself. So
Sokol studies. Remember it well.
She was proud to be here that day and excited to be back in this building. And then finally, we've kicked off our color run. We've done it for the past 3 years, fundraiser, and it goes all towards student activities to reduce the cost of bus trips, field trips. We've used the money to pay for a lot of students' kind of scholarships that families may not be able to afford, or extra activities that cost, so that no one's missing out on anything due to cost. And it goes to a lot of our presentations, things that we've done so far. Mostly we've used it to reduce transportation fees to field trips for the whole, when it's whole grades going on things. So that's kicked off, and that will be in June when we do the actual activity. So, I don't know if anyone has any other questions.
Another
for me?
fact to know and tell about Mrs. Sokol, she ordered on the first day available the PT Cruiser and had it the first day available to drive because it looked like an antique car. So she loved history. Any questions for Mr. Sturgis? I love a little nostalgia more than anything.
Most of us know that.
Yes, I think so. It's nice to reminisce.
Probably have the last one.
Dr. Dufresne.
Thank you again. Not too much since our last meeting, but I did a few activities going out to high school. And a sure sign of spring, the fridge letter went out to the seniors this Sunday. So that is a letter that goes on their fridge that has all their events and dates and all those things coming up. So we're hurtling towards June, it seems like. Highlight of the month was our visual arts department. We have our regional K-12 art show coming up April 1st from 5 to 8, so please join us. Our art department also engaged with Memory Project, a nonprofit youth arts organization that promotes intercultural understanding. And so our students put a lot of work into that. We're proud of them. Some of those students made Artists of the Quarter, and you can see them there. Emma Ryder, Kaylee, and Emma Pesaturo. We're proud of them and their work. They keep our hallways decorated. Our show choir, we are in the thick of show choir as of writing this. At one point in February, our show choir hosted 22 different groups for a competition from all around the East Coast, and it went off terrific. Our students are working hard, and as Mr. French continues to build that program, he's got some great ideas for the future. More to come on that. Our National Honor Society is planning our pickleball tournament, at which Mrs. Robato and I believe have been seated dead last and expect an early exit, but we are all confidence and no ability. I listed all of our league all-stars from the winter season, and we have a tremendous support for our athletic program. We're proud of our students, and we have so much going on. Sometimes it's hard to make all the playoff games, especially when they're back-to-back nights in places like Billerica and Points East. Boys basketball had a great regular season, 13-5. I think they bowed out in the round of 16. Girls basketball, very young this year. Only had one senior. They finished with 7 wins and showed great improvement. Boys track and girls track. Girls track had a record of 11-1. It was impressive. We host a couple of those meets, and just to watch those meets, I don't know how they even know when they're up. It doesn't even feel like organized chaos. It just feels like chaos, but they seem to know what's going on. Swim team also had a great record. Finished with 9-2 in the regular season. Hockey finished 16-3-1 on the boys' side, the girls' side 13-3-5. And it was a great winter season all the way around, and we are heading into. It's nice to see the spring sports getting up and going. It's my favorite season because I can walk right out after school and check the kids out. So overall, just a lot going on as we close out the winter season and begin to look towards the spring.
Questions for Dr. Dufresne? Thank you, Dr. Dufresne. Mr. Wood?
Thank you. So just a couple things you'll be hearing about in the future. Our business students are now joining a different organization, Skills Connected with Skills USA, but Junior Achievement. They'll be going on their first outing, and it is all funded by Junior Achievement. So that's pretty exciting. These will be competitions and moving up that are specific to their skills in the shop. You saw in the report about co-op. Co-op is on the rise, and that is great information for our kids. And we were told years and years ago that the health careers kids would not be able to go because of age, and that is not true. So we will have 2 kids going out probably the end of this week into health careers, one locally and one in Leicester. Today was the skills district competition, In the past, it was always at Bay Path, and they had a dance and everything else. COVID kind of changed that, and they haven't moved past to that. But we had about 70 kids in the library and a couple of the classrooms taking the technical skills in each of the 9 shop areas. You would think that the results would be in like that, but unfortunately they're not, and as soon as that will be full report for you all next month. And we are deep in placement of the current 8th grade into 9th grade. The letters went out for acceptance, and as Mrs. Boyd said, some letters went out with wait list. What happens in that process, though, is when Mrs. Flanagan, who's the grade 9 guidance counselor, comes over and does scheduling, kids have changed their minds. So as soon as we know that, we now set those aside. That opens up slots, and today our administrative assistant and I went through, did the first round, and there'll be 10 students who were on the wait list who will now be fully accepted, and that will hopefully keep going.
Questions for Mr. Wood? Thank you, Mr. Wood. Brings us to our committee reports. Mrs. Wagner, anything else to report for budget?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Technical, Mr. Dunn?
No meeting, no report.
Curriculum, Mrs. Cunningham?
Yes, so just a few highlights. So we met on Monday night. We went over AP enrollment and participation. So for AP, there was a total of 298 exams. The average score was a 3.7. The percent of exams with a score of 3 or higher was 89%. And about 70% of the students that are in the courses take the exam. We also reviewed 2024 college board scores, so 69 seniors took SATs. Oh, I thought you saw your hand go up. 69 seniors took SATs in fall of 2023. Scores were pretty much aligned with the state. And then we also discussed graduation requirements versus competency determination. So we talked about using a potential plan to use MCAS as a decision point, which would determine what that student does for the following 2 years in terms of how many credits and which courses they would take. And then we also had a presentation on mass core and how our current practices align with those, what are currently recommendations, that if they were to become requirements, we would be prepared for that. Next meeting is Monday, April 7th.
Thank you, Mrs. Cunningham. Any questions for Megan? All right, we're going to skip bylaw and policy for a moment. Negotiations, Mrs. Randall.
We will be going into executive session for Unit D after our meeting, and I believe we have Unit C coming up April 12th.
On Saturday morning, anyone wants to join us?
And there was no meeting for building a physical plant. We're going to bylaw and policy back up. Mrs. Fitzgerald.
Sure. We have 4 policies. I'd like to take them as 2 motions, with the first being policy ACGA, Civil Rights Grievance Procedure. This is before you for the first time. Tantasqua does not have a similar policy. This came before us as part of the ongoing civil rights audit and compliance procedure that we are going through, and MASC came out with this summer. It is required that we have this this procedure, a grievance procedure, as a separate and distinct policy. And I'm trying to think, again, we don't have one, nothing, this doesn't override or relate to any of our existing policies. It amplifies our discrimination policies by setting a procedure by which we can move forward with grievances. On that basis, we ask that we adopt policy ACGA on first reading.
It's a recommendation the bylaw and policy committee will bring to the floor for consideration and for discussion. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the chair declares on first new reading that the motion carries by unanimous consent.
Next, we have 3 policies before you on amended first reading. You may recall that 2 meetings ago, bylaw and policy spent a lot of time going through and considering policies that came down to us as a result of changes in the federal law regarding discrimination, sexual harassment, and gender-based grievances. The day after our subcommittee met, those advisories and regulations were all rolled back. And we were advised by the Attorney General's Office and MASC to revert back to our existing policies, assuming that they were compliant with state law, and to await further fallout and explanation from the federal level. So we went back to look at our policies because we knew that some of them, not in substance, but in terms of a few little areas, were not actually fully compliant with some of the areas that were included within their ambit. So I'd like to speak about all three and then take them as one motion, if I may. First, we have policy AC, non-discrimination policy including harassment and retaliation. You'll notice we changed that policy in boldface. You'll see policy including harassment and retaliation. Really confusing to go through our policy book and understand how these policies relate to one another. So hopefully that provides a little bit of clarity. The first paragraph is new, and I would ask that we move from the floor. You'll notice the bulleted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have a tense problem. Some of them are they're not consistent. On the one hand, we say promote the rights, but in the next we say working towards. So I would move that this is not a substantive amendment from the floor. We'd like to simply make those tenses consistent so that they are all future action. Promote, encourage, work in number 3, use, consider, and initiate in number 6. That was, I think, a typo. Otherwise, the policy is now fully in compliance with Massachusetts state law. Yeah, fully in compliance and a little bit more clear as to what it relates to. Next, we have policy ACA, non-discrimination on the basis of sex. You'll notice in boldface the word sexual orientation or gender identity. This has been and is the current law in Massachusetts, but as these laws have changed over the years, those two categories simply, we didn't catch them and include them in this policy at some point. So we are adding sexual orientation or gender identity to be consistent with Massachusetts state law. And finally, policy ACAB, sexual harassment. You see the change or the addition is on the 3rd full page in boldface under due process protections. A district may establish an informal investigation process that may, upon the request of the complainant, be followed by a formal process. That has been our practice, but it had not been explicitly spelled out in policy as it should be and needs to be. So we've made that change. On that basis, the subcommittee recommends that all 3 policies, AC, ACA, and ACAB, be amended on first reading.
The recommendation of the Bylaw and Policy Subcommittee will bring to the floor for consideration. Is there discussion? Any objection? Seeing none, then the chair declares by unanimous consent those policies are approved as amended on first reading.
Thank you. The other two on the agenda were reviewed, but there were no changes, no revisions, no action needed by this committee.
Thank you, Mrs. Fitzgerald. Okay, that'll bring us back to our superintendent's report. Mrs. Boyd.
Okay, so I think first we lost track of where on last year's agenda we put the school choice votes for next year's slots. I don't recall if it was under budget or under superintendent. We're hitting it here. So the one vote that we have left to take that's connected, so to speak, to your budget is your vote for how many school choice openings you have for next year. So to put a couple of things in perspective, current 7th grade class is 276. Current 8th grade, well, this was October 1. Could have changed a little bit since then. October 1, current 8th grade class is 301. 6th grade current class is 210. So that 276 would be 210 if you had 0 school choice students. The 5th grade is 243, so that's that bump back up that I mentioned earlier, and then it goes back down to that low 200s. My recommendation, given your 8th grade class is 301, going over to 9th grade, that you do not accept any 9th grade school choice students, even though we currently have 14 applicants. I suggest we do not accept any. We've got one 10th grade applicant. I don't suggest we open up to 10th grade at that point. For 8th grade, given that you've got a current 7th grade of 276, I'm going to recommend that you accept up to 10. You currently have 9, and the window's open until March 31st. For 7th grade, we currently have 30. The other pieces of data I've missed is we currently, 7th grade, you have 42 school choice, 8th grade, you have 40. You are graduating 36. So I'm going to recommend that you allow up to 40 incoming 7th graders. Currently, we have 30. We might get a few more. I don't think we're getting to 30. 35 might be the max, but give us the wiggle room. I think up to 40 is fine. Again, remembering the current 6th grade is at 210. So even if we got 40, you'd be at 250 with a 7th grade class of 276.
I'll make a motion to approve the school choice as presented.
Motion made by Mrs. Noyes Miller, seconded by Mrs. Randall to approve the recommendation of Mrs. Boyd up to 47th grade slots for school choice. Discussion?
In 10th, 8th grade.
And 10
0, 9, 0,
0, 9, and 10.
So that's 40 7th graders, 10 8th graders. Discussion? Mrs. Cole? Any objection? Seeing none by unanimous consent, the chair deems the motion carries.
Just a few other updates or comments. I'm making notes while my principals were making reports, just very publicly notifying / reminding Dr. Dufresne that as we are in spring season and sometimes practices need to be indoors, we have a brand new field house floor because of indoor activity from a slugger of a softball player that hit a sprinkler a couple of years ago. So maybe remind them we like that stuff outdoors. And I think that was one of the soft, whatever they use, softies, still hit it. So I will always remember, never forget it, never forget it. But yes, sports are definitely full throttle. Graduation, I'm not sure that we've told this committee, if not, it doesn't hurt to say it again. It's unusual. Graduation is on May 31st. We don't usually have graduations in May. It's just where the calendar fell with Memorial Day being earlier. So Saturday, May 31st with the rain date of Sunday, June 1st. But we are able to have it at 10 a.m. So make note of that. Usually in the past, our Saturdays, we've had to be in the afternoon because they're on the same day of SAT testing, and it's a pretty rigorous one. So the first hope is Saturday morning, May 31st, 10 a.m.
11 a.m.
11 a.m.
11. Change it on me, my friend.
Do I hear
Fine.
We just wanted to make sure we showed up
Well,
at 10.
see, I'm glad, oh, you're
I got
right.
some pushback on the setup, folks, so
Oh,
we
see?
compromised.
Just don't touch my parking.
With the rain date of Sunday. While we're on that, Dr. Dufresne has also respectfully requested, we don't have the details on the date, but the request is that instead of serving seniors pizza, we serve seniors breakfast. Still working on the details. His thought is, if we feed them, are you looking at before a rehearsal or?
So before, because the food gets them there, and
Yeah.
then,
Well, they run away before the food is ready.
Yeah.
Then they go.
Usually they,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
practice stupid early, and then
It's like
they
30
don't want to
minutes.
wait for those pizzas to be
Yeah.
delivered, so I don't know what date that will be
Can we
yet.
give
So
them pizza for
I can look it up right now. 'cause
Oh, you do?
it's on
You've already
the
decided when you, that the earlier we let them know, the earlier we have them
I'll look it up
helping.
right now.
We don't know what that breakfast is yet, but we're looking at trying to get some pizza. I could probably find a pizza
Honestly,
company to make them
they
better.
probably love it.
Yeah. Do you know the date?
I'll give it to you in 1 second.
Okay, I'll keep chatting in the meantime. So senior breakfast, sports outside, graduation, piggybacking on show choir, just an FYI, yeah, the junior high show choir is senior high is awesome too, it's beautiful. But the junior high, those kids are having one heck of a season. On April 2nd, both the junior high, the senior high, and I believe I don't know if it's high school jazz band, but some high school band group will be performing for the elementary students. We kind of started a tradition of, I couldn't tell you the grades, the principals decide which grades works out best, but one or two of the grades of every single elementary school comes up, gets a little field trip and sees our performing arts programs, which is awesome. That's happening on April 1st. The home show for anyone who wants to see those high school or junior high show choir kids is Friday night, the 11th of April. April and May meetings, would you like me to discuss those now? April, just reminding folks, it's actually a normal calendar. We're a mess this year. Because usually you'd think April, we have to be bumped to the Wednesday after April vacation. The third Tuesday of April is the 15th before vacation starts. So that is our regular April meeting. May, however, May gets a little messy. Normally we would be the 20th. I've got some negotiations going on, and we're looking to push it off by 1 week to allow it to also be the joint meeting. And also, because the joint meeting would be your superintendent's evaluation, all that good stuff. So we were looking to have that on Wednesday, the 28th, unless we cannot get a quorum or have some major issues. Say that again?
I was just looking at senior class night is the 28th, but that's fine.
It's the 29th.
Oh, see now.
Class night's the 29th.
That's right.
Right.
Class night is
I thought it
typically
was
the
Friday
Thursday.
night.
All right, I thought I had it all. Great.
Okay.
And we're trying to juggle around moving town
Yeah.
meetings.
Town meetings, yeah, there's a couple of towns that keep shifting their town meetings every year on us. Oh. So if you're all okay and can plan that, May 28th for the May meeting, and it'll be the joint meeting. We'll figure out June when we get closer.
And
Yes?
then the
Breakfast?
rehearsal is the 30th.
Okay, so
Friday.
Friday morning, we'll, anyone who's interested in,
We'll send these dates out in an
Yeah.
email. I know there's a lot, so we'll send them out so you can validate. That's mostly just because I didn't write them down.
unreal. All right. That is all I have under superintendent's report. If you're okay with me, we can segue right into communication.
Communications, there's 2 items.
Yeah, so just worth noting, which is interesting, you've got the item you've already gotten electronically, you keep getting the quote of 7 Worcester County Collaborative, so we just need to note that. The other item, I don't know if you've had a chance to read, I just thought when it showed up in my inbox the day we were putting this packet together and thought it was worth sending out.
You could have written it.
Yeah, Rose. I just, and what I just thought it was an interesting read, which to me just shows how ugly it is out there. And I am very grateful not to have what I think is the underbelly of the ugliness out there. That it is tough. All around us, there are districts and towns in a lot of trouble. So yes, it is because of the perfect storm on finances. Yes, there are some that may have built some cliffs, but the fact that those organizations felt the need to band together and do a joint statement to me means there's some pitchforks and torches out there, and that's sad. We don't have that in our districts, and I'm very, very thankful that as tight as things are, we don't have folks trying to blame school committee members or school administration. We're doing our best. We're just in a place of expenses keep increasing and revenue sources do not. And we hopefully will get through this year with what we just presented, but if we can't, I'll be back to you and let you know. So I just thought that was worth giving you folks for a read. That's it for me.
Mrs. Boyd. All right, we have no unfinished business. We have covered new business, public access. You want to say hi?
Sure, I was just going to say that I probably would have requested Stairway to Heaven.
There you go.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
That's better than Highway to Hell. All right, public access is covered, and before we move into open forum, I do want to recognize, this is Mrs. Beleza's last meeting in her second stint with us, which we've been very grateful for.
Thank
Your song would be Hotel California, because that's how it treated you.
She really means it this time. She said the same thing a year ago, but a writing campaign brought her back for a year. But she's made it very clear she will not accept the write-ins this year. Not that we're taking it personal at all.
Mary, we do appreciate all your years of service. You've been a great member. You've been active over the years, served on a number of subcommittees, did searches with us, and you've always been a pleasure. So thanks for your service.
Thank you.
It's just an open forum. All right, seeing none, we do need to convene into executive session. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to enter into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21A, subsection 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. The committee will return to regular session, and so we will not adjourn out of executive session. We will return to regular session. Is there a motion? Motion's been made by Mrs. Randall, it's been seconded by Mr. Dunn. Will require a roll call vote. Valenzola, yes.
Noise Mill, yes.
Mr. Haggerty.
Yes.
Randall, yes. Alden, yes.
Belinda, yes.
Coble, yes.
Jager, yes.
Cousins, yes.
Goodwin, yes.
Limmer, Kane, yes.
Fitzgerald, yes.
Cunningham, yes.
All right, so at this time, I'll invite non-committee members or required staff are free to exit.
You're welcome to stay, principals,
Oh, yeah,
but
you don't have to leave. All right, having voted to reconvene into open session, at this time, I will take a motion to approve and authorize the chair to sign on behalf of the committee a ratified UD contract. Motion's been made by Mrs. Noyes Miller, seconded by Mrs. Randall. Any discussion? Any objection? Seeing none, hearing none, then by unanimous consent, the chair deems the motion carries. The contract from the Tantasqua School Committee is ratified.
Motion to adjourn.
Hold on. Mrs. Belezzo, would you like to make your final motion?
Motion to adjourn.
The motion made by Mrs. Belezza will allow Mrs. Alden to second that motion for adjournment. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Opposed? The meeting adjourned at 7:33. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you much, folks.
You want these back?
Yeah, send them back up.
Just until I sign it.
Yeah, I'll take the contract.